Good evening and welcome to Generation Movie. A few days before Halloween 2024. We're also a few days before the election 2024. I don't know what's scarier. Yeah, I don't know what's scarier. Spookier. Welcome to Generation Movie. My name is J.W. Colwell. I'm joined as always by my good friend and partner in this, this thing we've created, Rich Drees. Rich Drees, how are you tonight? How are things going? What's going on with you?
I'm exhausted, and this is perhaps a good. I'm not even like doing this as a tease into what the main movie is going to be tonight. It's just like the last 10 days I've had, been New York Comic-Con, come home, turn right around, catch the back half of the Philadelphia Film Festival.
Yeah, you seem exhausted. I also, I think when we usually do shows every week, and I think when we get to November and December, you've got a lot of stuff going on with screenings because you have to be in by a certain date to be able to pick the year's best for your film festivals, for your film awards, I should say. And then I think I get here and we have our two nephews that we live with, and Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, it becomes a smash 3-month nerve fraying. Like, what are we going to get the kids? What are we going to do here? What are they going to go as Halloween? Who's coming for Thanksgiving? It becomes like all these things, and it just, doing the weekly show is great, but it's something like, I do look forward to our break times, and I do look forward to our Christmas break coming up and our Thanksgiving break coming up, just so we can recharge and get our, we go see things for fun, and we don't have to watch something for fun or watch something for the show. You know what I mean?
At this point, I don't think I'm really watching anything for fun. I mean, obviously, it's fun to watch movies. I'm going to say that.
It is. Good evening, friends. Good evening, Ken McKernan.
Good evening, Ken. But it's all new stuff and reviewing stuff from this last year.
Well, and that's what makes,
when I kick back to watch, I'm in a film noir mood, it's going to be in the middle. It's going to be like the second week of December when I get to do that again.
Right. I agree, and I think we're watching. Watching this show in particular is a blessing because we're watching movies that have stood the test of time, but also that you and I pick out and curate. You know what I mean? Of what we want to talk about. Good evening, gentlemen. I have 3 screens going. You guys, the Yankees and the Giants. Giants are the best prospect of the 3, as Rich and I are both exhausted, and the Yankees are currently losing. So I wish anybody who's a Yankee fan's the best. Let's talk some news. Let's talk what's happening box office wise. That's kind of messy.
Do you mind
what were you going to say?
Kind of give a quick rundown of some of the good stuff I saw at
the let's do that. That's always a good thing. Let's do that first.
First thing I saw, and I love Philly because they're very accommodating to local stories and local filmmakers and regional filmmakers. So the first thing I actually saw was a documentary called "No One Died: The Wing Bowl Story." I don't know if you're old enough to remember what Wing Bowl was.
Is the Wing Bowl something where people eat a lot of wings?
Mm-hmm.
And it was in Philly, right? It was like, and did somebody?
Obviously, it was
Did somebody almost die? Is that why we have a documentary?
No one almost died, but how out of control each year it got, how it grew, and how much drunken shenanigans were going on around it. It's a wonder no one died. The Wing Bowl kind of made like the Howard Stern show look like a Sunday school picnic. It was
so basically the action park of competitive eating.
Oh, good call. Yeah, I like that. Yes. Yeah, it was a fun documentary.
Sometimes they hit me, Rich. Sometimes they hit me.
It was a fun documentary. It'll show up probably on Amazon or somewhere at some point.
Is there any major releases that you saw that you can't talk about, that you can say, like, hey, I did see this, and you can give us a wink?
Anything I saw at the festival I can talk about. So,
nice. Okay.
The Last Showgirl with Pam Anderson. She can actually act in this thing. I was impressed.
Interesting.
It's thematically very similar to The Substance in the fact that it's dealing with a woman who's aging and trying to find her place in the world as she is no longer valued for her physical looks and stuff like that.
So it's like the wrestler. Wait a second. It's like the wrestler of stripper movies.
Yeah.
There we go.
You are on a roll, my friend.
I watched The Player last week. You know, for kids.
The Graduate 2.
Graduate 2. It's not about plastic.
I saw Better Man, which I think some people have probably seen the trailer for that already. It's the
trailer. The day you talked about it with me, I saw the trailer and I was looking at it going, if I hadn't talked to you before I saw the trailer, I legit would have openly gasped out what the fuck is going on. But since you spoke highly of it, I didn't gasp what the fuck is going on. I gasped, Rich said I probably should see this, or I probably will like this. So
this one's scheduled for a Christmas Day release. It's some crazy audacious filmmaking. It's from the director of Last Showman. And I think, he kind of takes it up several notches from what he was doing there. There's a very sly sense of humor to itself. Greatest Showman, yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, Greatest Showman.
It's The Last Showgirl, Greatest Showman.
Yeah, sorry.
And then a Better Man with the monkey.
Yes.
Okay.
Robbie Williams from Take That, who went on to a very successful solo career, more successful than the band actually had, or anybody else from the band had subsequently. And he was involved, so it does kind of talk candidly about his drug use and stuff like that. But it's it's kind of self-reflective, and it's very interesting though. Like I said, there's some great filmmaking. There's like a 5 or 6 minute sequence when Take That first gets signed and they burst out of the office space, and there's this giant musical number through the streets of Piccadilly Circus and everything, which is obviously very stitched together digitally. It's because it moves locations and stuff like that.
But the key here is his life is being played out by a walking chimpanzee, right? Like it's
a CG chimp. Robbie is himself represented as a monkey because, as he says in the beginning, that's how he's always seen himself, as a performing monkey for other people. So that's
so it's deep. Okay, cool.
That's kind of the least of the conceits, and I don't think they kind of get into it too much beyond it just being a visual thing. So
I will say it won't be my first choice on Christmas Day because I like horror movies. So Christmas Day is reserved to open presents and then go see Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. So
yes,
the best Christmas gift a horror film fan could get.
Nothing says Christmas like the Unholy Dead.
What it's a birthday movie. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking at the things that I saw. Another Philly documentary called The Philly Sound Heard Around the World about Sigma Studios, which is like one of the most influential studios in pop music from the 60s all the way through the end of the century. I kind of knew the broad strokes of the Sigma Sound Studios story, but this filled in a lot of gaps. It kind of connected things to the whole Philly music explosion in the 60s, thanks to Dick Clark doing American Bandstand from Philadelphia originally. It's really, really good. Lots of fun. Very interesting.
I got to catch up on two things this week. I caught up on Terrifier 3. I was in an empty theater, and I don't know if there's anything more unnerving than watching a Art the Clown movie in an empty theater where you're kind of like looking over your shoulder and just making sure something's not there. Also, I caught SNL this week, the Saturday night. You know what? I like its frenetic energy. I you know, and I some of the stories I knew about, but like, you know, they're kind of you know, pasted up. I liked some of the portrayals.
Okay.
I thought the kid who played both Jim Henson and Andy Kaufman from Succession was fantastic. Really cool, kind of like, you know, I also was intrigued by, you know, just the general nature of it, the idea that we're putting this madhouse on. Now, you know, all the fighting that's in the movie, you know, we you and I both know that's not true, right?
It's emblematic of tensions between certain cast members.
Yeah,
I would say. But
well,
I mean,
like a little bit stylized.
John Belushi did throw an actual coffee mug at Chevy's head like 45 minutes before the show.
Although I'm sure he wished he did. Like because Chase, and that's the thing. I think, you know, all of the stuff they put in for Chase, like where he's like, where do you see yourself in 45 years? Like, oh, by myself, you know, a man onto an island, you know, whatever. And it's like, I think that's nice after the fact. I don't know that Chevy Chase ever viewed himself as somebody that was going to end up being alone. You know what I mean? Fired from a show that, you know, he was really good on with all these other comics, and then just kind of like acted like a fucking asshole. You know what I mean? So I think it's and a cameo by Uncle Milty's Meat. Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, everybody knows about Milton Berle. Like, so, but the movie itself is energetic and it's fun to watch, and you get a taste of things, of how wacky it was, you know, and just an idea. Like, I just think it's a slice of artists, like how artists live, kind of thing. I would, you know what it reminded me of, and again, I'm on a roll tonight, but I don't know why. But like the movie, it has a lot in common with is Almost Famous, right? The idea that you're in the back watching everything as it unfolds, and all these, you know, all these different characters are filling roles and doing different things, and like the Ebersol role, you know, we know Ebersol was not as cool as portrayed in the movie. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
we know he wasn't. You know, and the way Michaels is portrayed is pretty amazing. Like, we're going to try to get everybody on. You know, I don't, and there are other things where I don't know if they're actually true, but they make for dramatic moments. Like the whole sequence with the Billy Crystal thing, where he's like, "We're going to ask for 4 minutes. We need to get 4 minutes. If we don't get 4 minutes, we're not going to do it." And then, like, I don't know if that's true or not, right? And
he was there with his agent. But I don't think everything from what I've seen him talk about that night, he wasn't there with Valerie Bromfield, you know, going, okay, do we stand together or whatever. I think it was more of a case of,
that's
I can't do this in 2 minutes, and that's where,
and that's fine. And so that's what I mean. Like, so like for most people, it will become, when they see it, it will become the definitive of, oh, that must have actually really happened. Which case, I would say it's more for dramatic purposes, but the dramatic purposes work. The kid playing Belushi, the person I had to believe in for me to watch the movie and enjoy the movie was the kid playing Belushi, and I thought he did a pretty good job of trying to gild the lily, right, on what Belushi was supposed to be and what he wanted to be, right. Because Belushi's one of those people, like, for me, Belushi and Candy are the two that I always talk about more than anything, with just people I associate with, and I just look at their performances and go, you know, most people go, oh, what movie would you like to be in? And you're like, Batman. I was like, Uncle Buck. I'd like to be in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. You know what I mean?
I mean, the John Belushi story of him not signing his contract until like right before they started, fairly close to the truth. It didn't involve going outside and him skating or anything like that, or Gilda coming along and talking him into it and stuff like that.
Well,
That
the idea that there was a Polaroid commercial that was kind of like where he was freaking out about that as well. And Lorne Michaels like, no, 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 we don't want to bring him up. We don't want to bring up ads. You know what I mean? I liked it, and like I said, I enjoyed it. I like Reitman's work. I think Reitman has his dad's knack for comedic bluster, like the chaos. You know what I mean? Of watching a comic, or how he does comedic scenes works really well for him in the idea for this particular movie. Terrifier 3 was exactly what you would expect it would be. I had somebody say, was it really gory? And I'm like, yes, it was really gory. And while I enjoyed it, what I will say is we need parameters. We need some sort of parameters for this character. First movie happens All Hallows Eve, the movie that started all when it wasn't played by David Howard Thornton. And then it becomes Terrifier 2. Terrifier 2 adds the incredible final girl, played by Laverna, right? And it sort of sets her up as like the person that can beat Art. But if we don't know what Art is, and we don't have a backstory in Art, and we don't have any of these things, I assume we're gonna get it in the fourth movie, because there's definitely going to be a fourth movie.
Oh yeah.
But I think we need to start getting it. It's the same thing I kind of said about Smile 2. The Creature's 2-0 in the Smile franchise thus far, and nobody's come close to beating it. So we're going to need a moment where humanity gets over. It's kind of like wrestling a little bit. Like and like part of it is discovering the backstory for somebody, and then having somebody that's an equal that can take the bad guy down is important. And they brought her out in Terrifier 2, but it's not. She kind of gets mashed. Like she just gets brutalized in 3, like as if to pay for being a hero in 2. She gets absolutely brutalized, has everything taken from her. Like it's just. So I hope that's where we're headed. And why I say that as a transition, we should talk about box office really quick. That movie is doing remarkably well.
I still had 2 other movies I wanted to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I jumped in on you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. Quickly though, Jude Law's The Order is pretty good. He plays the FBI agent who brings down a white supremacist group in the Pacific Northwest in the 80s. Based on a true story. Some of folks may remember. I'm sorry?
We need him now.
I know. Some folks may remember the true murder of a Denver, Colorado talk radio host that was turned into the movie Talk Radio. That was all connected to this group of domestic terrorists, which I didn't know. I had known about the murder even before they turned it into a movie. So that was an interesting kind of link for me. It's a little dry. We don't get a whole lot of him as a character outside of being a law guy, but that's fine. It's an interesting story, and I think one worth seeing and talking about again. Go figure. Let's see.
You say it takes place in the 80s and not 2020?
Yes. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I saw the new Steve McQueen Blitz about a kid growing up in London during World War II. It was a little flat, honestly, and I was expecting more for somebody like McQueen. I think we've seen, this kind of story done a little bit better. There's some nice stylistic flourishes, but that's about it. And then the last thing I saw, last year we had a 2-part adaptation from France of The Three Musketeers, and it was amazing. The directors are back with their new adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo. And
they're doing really good work. They're like,
yeah,
they're kind of on fire.
Yeah, and it's 3 hours long, and the thing cooks like nobody's business. We were.
Is it all in French or is it in American? Is it in English?
It's in French. It's in French with subtitles. Who cares? By the time
I'm just asking for everybody.
Yeah. No. For me, I don't care about subtitles. I don't have a problem with that. But I watch a lot of movies with subtitles, so I'm good at being able to read and still see
everything in a very quick fashion. I remember with a subtitle story. I remember going to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon opening night at Cinemark in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and people were flipping the fuck out that it was in subtitles. Like, people were yelling out loud, like, "What the fuck is this?" And I'm like, it's in Mandarin. Shut up.
But like I said, this thing cooks. I mean, by the time we go through the whole thing, he's arrested, he's sentenced to the island, and he escapes. That's the whole first hour of the movie. That's the first third of the movie, and it flew by so fast that I knew it was going to be a 3-hour movie. I was like, wow, we're really through this, this big setup so far. How long are we? It feels like it's only like 20 minutes. And then I looked at my watch, and I was like, oh my God, no, it's 60 minutes. Cool. So don't let that runtime scare you away from this when this shows up.
Yeah, that happens sometimes for people. They look at a runtime of something and go, I don't. I have a friend who I play D&D with right now, and his definitive rule on anything is that it can't be longer than an hour and 45 minutes, or he won't go see it, or he won't go see it in the theater. And I'm like, and then he also coincidentally asked me why the last time we talked, he asked me why I didn't invite him to movies anymore. I'm like, because you complained about the running time. I can't deal with that shit. I can't have you sitting there bored when I'm enamored with something that's an hour and 46 minutes long. I can't do it. I can't do it. Right?
Movie, but so instead, I will sit down and watch 7 episodes of a TV series in a row.
But okay, so Count of Monte Cristo is really good. When is that coming out?
Yeah, that I'm not sure on what the U.S. distribution on that
I wonder if it's going to be like maybe February. It sounds like a February.
If it kind of goes the way Three Musketeers did, it will be like sometime, in the next couple of months into the new year.
Rich,
but it was a lot of fun and some good moments of like, ooh.
Can I tell you something I'm sick of, and we've talked about it a lot, and I want to get it off my chest how sick So I opened the Hollywood Reporter today. I opened the thing on my phone. I was reading it, and what do I look up? And I see Venom 2, Venom 3 only grossed $51 million. Superhero fatigue is here.
Oh, fuck off.
For fuck's sake. For fuck's sake. It's not here. It's not. It hasn't been here. It's not going to be here. Didn't we just have a movie gross $1.5 billion? Didn't
Oh yeah.
What the fuck is going like? And the thing is, like, oh well, Venom didn't gross 90 million, so something's off. And it's like, no, maybe people are just sick of this franchise. They're sick of Sony trying to create a Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man. Maybe they're just sick of that.
I mean, there was another Hollywood Reporter story too this week where they said, "Hey, this horror movie is doing okay, but Hollywood's just an
Hollywood's worried about next year." I read that one, right? Okay, it's like I feel like these horror stories. You're right. They did the exact same thing earlier, and I was looking at the movies for next year. Where they were talking, right? Where we were talking to execs, and they're worried about about next year's releases. And I'm looking at the releases, Rich. The releases are all movies that are going to gross bank. Like they're not like there's nothing to the releases where you go, oh, that might not do well. Like the one is December 5th is Five Nights at Freddy's 2. The first one grossed a silent $133 million domestic.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is going to do well. It's not us. It's the first time I've ever been to a genre movie where I went, this is not for me. Right?
I
But
recall.
the idea that Hollywood is somehow like, oh, they're concerned, right? With where it's like, why are they concerned? What are they concerned about? Why are we talking about the fucking superhero fatigue when we just had a movie gross for $1.5 billion? And when are we going to get past the point where we say in the story, hey, it has little to do with fatigue and more of whether or not the movies are good or the movies are, movies that people want or any of those things. You know what I mean? Like, and I just went in, I was like looking at it going, I was reading it and I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever read. And I like the Hollywood Reporter. You know what I mean? Like, I like the Hollywood Reporter. And it's one of those things where it's like, I was looking at it also 2 days after I saw Smile 2 and a day after I saw Terrifier 3. And I was reading the story going, we just had a movie that cost $2 million and it's on pace to gross like 50 million domestic. And it's, it doesn't have a rating. Like it's playing in places where you would never think, you know what I mean? Like I would just like some of these people to get their head out of their ass for 5 minutes.
Oh, that would be
not well, and just not do a story where it's like, oh my god, this is the world is ending because Venom 3 didn't gross over $50 million, or it just grossed over 50. You know what I mean? Like I just don't understand, and especially when we have a bunch of stuff in the pipeline for superhero stuff, like you can't tell me. Is superhero fatigue setting in? Okay. You can't tell me that the most anticipated movie of next year is not Superman. You can't. Like
out of everything that's in line, no. I mean, for me, yeah, ridiculous. Obviously it is, but
it's ridiculous. I just think it's one of those things. And the horror genre thing, you're right. I read that story and I thought about us and I thought about the show, and I was just thinking to myself, we have 2 hits. They're 2 horror movie hits. You're coming off like Smile 2 outgrows Smile 1. Like, where is this coming from? And I like, I know, like other horror movies coming out. The Wolfman, people aren't a little bit excited about it, even though like the first bit of makeup kind of like fell flat, but the new trailers are pretty good. Blumhouse, they did The Invisible Man, looks pretty good, right? I just think, horror movies coming in 2025 are not movies that I go, I am concerned about people not showing up for horror films. Like I just think it's one of the dumbest things because it's a critic proof, and maybe that's the reason. You know what I mean? Maybe that's the reason when you make stories like this. But like they were like talking in the story, like, oh well, we talked to a bunch of people, and they're super horror films coming out in 2025. Ready? Sinners, which looks fantastic, right?
Okay.
Sinners is the one with Michael B. Jordan, and it's a vampire movie in the bayou set in World War II. Megan 2.0, we're worried that Megan 2.0 is going to do bad business. Like we're concerned about. We're getting the Running Man, new version of the Running Man. We're getting Black Phone 2. We're getting the last Conjuring movie. We're getting another Saw film, whether we want it or not. We're getting a sequel to 28 months later, 28 weeks later, 28 years later. We're getting Ride with Maggie Gyllenhaal, Julianne Hough. We're getting The Monkey, which is from Osgood Perkins, which is based on a Stephen King novel. I don't understand. I don't understand why the Hollywood Reporter has chosen to make it crazy and just.
Sometimes we see executives who want to blame the audience for their bad decisions. When it comes down to, okay, you guys had a bad day at the office with, making this movie. That's okay. It happens. Everybody went in with best intentions. I always assume, at least. And so,
I don't think that's the case with Joker. I really don't. I don't think that's the case.
Well, okay,
at all.
But I kind of don't. It's like, okay, every time you're at bat and you swing, you don't think you're going to strike out. You think you're going for the home run.
Well, even if that's the case, if that's what you're going to go with, say you are going to try for a home run, the best hitters in baseball fail 70% of the time.
Yeah. So what's a good batting average for somebody in baseball, in Major League Baseball? I don't know. I don't watch. I'm not a baseball guy, but
a 300 hitter. So 70% of the time they fail. I'm just saying, I just think it's crazy whenever something doesn't do well, there's 100 articles about, this is fatigue is set in. But you're right. It was horror fatigue last week and superhero fatigue this week. And I look at that, the one that jumps out is horror fatigue because horror endures. Horror
is cheap to make most times, and usually has a really good return on investment if it hits. And even if it doesn't hit, your loss is probably going to be a little bit less than what it would be if you spent $200 million on a movie about
Megalopolis or
a Batman villain and that has outright contempt for its audience. A
Flashpoint contempt for its audience. But that's a great place to start. Yes. Let's talk about return on investments, and let's talk about.
I had one other.
Oh my god! Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go.
And it's not this genre or that genre fatigue. Like we said, it's bad movies fatigue, or the audience feeling they're being taken advantage of fatigue. The Indian film industry is going nuts. They have a whole bunch of different franchises that they put out one movie a year, 2 movies a year, with different characters that kind of link up and kind of cross back over and everything. And it's something I've been, working on a piece on for FilmBuff online. It's something I've been kind of interested in with how they do this. They'll have like a couple different freestanding movies and then go, you know what? All these characters kind of do the same thing. We should throw them together into something. And boom, suddenly it is. There's one director who has kind of developed what's been now known as the cop-verse. There's like 5 or 6 different movies with 3 different lead characters. The newest one is coming out actually this Friday. It's called Sing 'Em Again. Sing 'Em is played by AJ Devan. He's kind of a very by the book cop. And the big story that broke last week about this movie was that another big Hollywood action star, Salman Khan, is going to have a cameo in this movie, playing his character from this other franchise called of 3 movies called The Bang, which was basically it's Fast and Furious on motorcycles. Is that franchise? So taking his character and kind of merging it into all these different cop movies that this one director is doing.
Cop universe?
It's called the Cop-verse. So we're taking the DeBong films, dropping them in. It's like taking this and dropping it into a world where Bad Boys, Michael Mann's Miami Vice, and I don't know, Heat all exist at one point. And you're just like, yeah, let's drop the Fast and Furious films in the middle of that too, which is kind of crazy to me. But it's exciting as well.
I would pay money to see Val Kilmer kill Vin Diesel. Or Michael Madsen kill Vin Diesel.
That'd be fun. But so audiences, if you're doing something interesting or something fun, they will be there for it. It's
Right.
just,
It's a bad movie thing.
sometimes,
It's a bad movie
yeah.
fatigue, or the idea that I'm not going to go to the theater if this is going to be streaming in 2 weeks.
Well,
May
that's
just
another big chunk of it too, because some movies have done badly that don't their box office is not reflective of their quality.
that's
I'll there are certain movies I think have were very well made that did not get the box office they deserved. I've seen some real crap movies that make $1 billion. So
um okay, but
it's
you
just
know what? We're not talking about
but
a crap movie tonight.
no, we are not.
We're talking about this movie, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Wes Craven, 1984, and it is in the argument um, for the greatest horror film of all time. Like it's in top five, right? It's somewhere in the five where my five might be different from your five, but you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
my five might be like The Shining, The Exorcist, The Thing, 82. I have to say it. Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street. Or your five might be different. Might be it. It could be, but this movie is in the argument, and what has to be discussed is, what sets this movie apart from other slasher movies that are coming out in the 80s, right? Um, and it starts with production. It starts with Wes Craven and the stories that are behind this screenplay, Rich, are utterly amazing. The stories,
Mhm.
right? He lived in L.A. When he was growing up. There was the war and everything that happened in Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, right? All those immigrants and refugees, the Hmong refugees came over, right? And a lot of them had disturbing nightmares, refused to sleep. It created a medical condition, and it's also called sudden unexplained death syndrome or Brugada syndrome. And so he started it started as a series of articles in the LA Times that he read, and then it just, hey, we've got another story like that. And he basically looks at that as one of, like, it helps to influence the Eastern kind of religion and also mysticism that's involved in the movie a little bit, right? And like the other things you read about when this movie was getting made was all of the things that are involved with Freddy. Freddy is actually a Wes Craven's bully from childhood, and or not a bully, but somebody like an old man that he ran into that kind of yelled at him or snide at him the wrong way. And so the way he's built is built like an old man kind of thing. The name is exactly from a childhood bully. The
Mhm.
the idea that you know the sheer volume of things that are built into Freddy from the get-go in this script, right? The idea that he started out, of course, as a child molester, but he didn't want to make it too graphic, so he became a child murderer. And eventually a couple of the other movies go back to that, though. Freddy versus Jason's famous for going back to the more purient version of Freddy, as opposed to
Mhm.
like the Freddy that's just interested in killing. Um, but I think when they're making the movie, it like it all starts with the screenplay that he develops and he crafts and he makes, and he gets onto hard times with the movies he's making. He's coming off of Swamp Thing and The Hills Have Eyes Part 2 and a couple other movies, and this script kind of pops out of him, and he can't get anybody to buy it, Rich. I was
Mhm.
like, that is one of the scariest things if you're a writer. You say to a writer who's having trouble selling something or whatever, oh, just so you know, Wes Craven couldn't sell A Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, he was unable, like, he went through, and the one is legit. Like the one is a legit interesting story. So first studio that passes on it is Paramount, because they're making a movie called Dreamscape, which, by the way, kind of an underrated gem. A really good movie with Dennis Quaid and Eddie Albert, and it's about the president being trying to be assassinated in his dreams. So it's a really great little movie, but Paramount passes because the scripts are too similar. He then gets a rejection letter from Universal Studios, and this is the rejection letter. We've reviewed the script you submitted, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Unfortunately, the script did not receive enough enthusiastic enough response from us to go forward at this time. However, when you have a finished print, please get in touch and we'll be delighted to screen it for a possible negative pickup. Well, thank God, Universal. Thank God you're going to do that for him. That letter, by the way, was, from what I understand, all intents and purposes, was put up on Wes Craven's wall for the rest of his film career. And so finally it comes down to New Line, right? New Line reads it. Robert Shea, who's in charge of New Line, at that time was more of a distributor than a producer and maker of films.
Yeah.
And so Robert Shea says, "Yeah, let's do this. We don't know if we have the financing, but we'll try." And it leads to New Line becoming the term for New Line being the house that Freddy built. Right, that's the studio that Freddy built is New Line. And again, I was reading about this. A lot of odd little deals, with this movie, a la Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? Media Home Entertainment, Heron Communications, Smart Egg Pictures. And when you talk to Shea about the budget, all the film's original investors backed out at one point or another during pre-production. Original budget was $700,000, ended up being $1.1 million. And there are rumors that it came from some weird Yugoslavian guy who had a lady that wanted to be an actress, or any of these other film companies that all chipped in. And I think that's one of the more interesting stories, is that this particular screenplay, with how carefully it's crafted, an hour and 30 minutes of perfect horror. No studios being interested in it is one of those. It's one of those
evergreen stories, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the scene from Animal House, when they're talking and they take out the kid's car and they bust up the fucking car, and we fucked up. We fucked up on this one. This one we fucked up on. We missed. We fucked up. And the casting is really interesting as well for production. Production lasted about 32 days. They were a little over budget, but the casting, the names involved that were up for Freddy, the one is really interesting to me. David Warner, who was a great British actor from the 70s and 80s, fantastic in Time Bandits, really great in Time After Time as Jack the Ripper. And just one of our greatest character actors.
I dare say, though, I don't see him continuing in the role if it was as big a hit with him, and then they decided to do sequels. I
don't know that I also don't know that it would have been. I don't know that it would have worked, because I think part of the charm of Englund's performance, for me, comes from that he's specifically trying to get the V character out of his craw.
Right? Which is funny because today is the 40th anniversary of V, the weekly TV series.
Right. And the reason he had to take this movie was because in between the V miniseries and the V series, there was about 8 months where he was broke as an actor. So his agent sent him up for this, and he came in dressed like a fucking scumbag. This is one of those, slicked hair back. But everybody, like a lot of people were up for the role. Kane Hodder originally read for the role, which was really interesting because Hodder would later become Jason Voorhees, which is another interesting kind of like weird thing. But Craven, when Hodder read for it, I guess what they say is Craven was like very much against the idea. He was very much sick of the large, brooding, huge bad guys. He wanted somebody that could blend in at a store, is the way it's described. The idea that Freddy is a child murderer who basically he's nothing to look at, right? And then Craven actually explains, couldn't find an actor to play Freddy Krueger with the sense of ferocity I was seeking. Craven recalled on the film's 30th anniversary, everyone was too quiet, too compassionate towards children. Then Robert Englund auditioned. He wasn't as tall as I'd hoped, and he had baby fat, but he impressed me with his willingness to go to the dark places in his mind. Robert got Freddy. He understood him. And then, I don't
think this film entirely presents Freddy as the way we know him today. I don't think we get that. Yeah, I think it's a very broad sketch of what would get filled out over the next several movies. Well, and I think we're lucky though that they cast him because he was able to, fill in those blanks as they go along.
Well, and also like the interesting, like he only has like 10 lines in the movie, right? And they all are delivered with ferocity. I was fascinated, like Englund did everything to get in. I looked strange. I sat there, listened to Wes, who's tall and preppy and erudite. I posed a bit like Klaus Kinski, and that was the audition. And basically the whole reason he took it was because he was on break from V. V miniseries was a big hit. They were going to go to series. And if you remember back, like I know you remember it as well as I do, the V miniseries was everywhere. It was
the first one was great.
The second
one was
not so good. But the first V miniseries is one of the greatest things ever put on television.
Yeah,
and then the TV series and everything else.
I mean, we can kind of yell at NBC about that because Kenneth Johnson, the creator's original idea was we do the miniseries and then once a year we do like 2 or 3 TV movies, and to continue this story. And NBC was like, no, a second miniseries, and then
we need to kill that golden goose immediately. That goose is not going to give us eggs.
And then this network goes, oh shit, figure out a way to undo that ending so we can do it as a TV series. And the TV series was like $1 million an episode. It was ridiculously
super expensive. But it was
for a show that reused a lot of its visual effect footage. And what's funny is I noticed because it was shot on the Warner Brothers lot. When you take the Warner Brothers studio tour, there's plaques on every single soundstage, and you'll say like, some of the big things that shot there, like Casablanca and this and that and the other and and then V. I have a picture of myself pointing to, standing next to one of the plaques, pointing to the fact that
which one of these things is not like the other,
as well as Casablanca. But I will say this. In the V TV series, and I know we're going really far afield, and I'll circle us back. Sorry. In the V series, remember
it's called the Weave, Rich. It's called the
character. The character of Elias had that bar that was kind of like in the Free City of Los Angeles, had the bar where like people could meet, and it was kind of like Rick's Cafe American in Casablanca. So it kind of made sense when I saw that V and Casablanca shared a soundstage. Yeah, I was like, same thing's happening.
Also, casting wise, Nancy, everybody was up for Nancy. Like the sheer volume of people that Heather Langenkamp beat out for this role, and also, Heather Langenkamp had gotten beaten out for a couple of roles. So like, Annette Benson, who's the casting director, had auditioned Heather Langenkamp for Night of the Comet and The Last Starfighter, that she lost to Catherine Mary Stewart. Both of them. And then Demi Moore, Courtney Cox, Tracy Gold, Jennifer Grey all had auditioned. Langenkamp ended up becoming like a natural in the role. She becomes one of the 5 or 6 greatest final girls in film history. And then she also returns for Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 Dream Warriors, and also would eventually come back for a meta version of herself in Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So she becomes one of the defining members of the franchise, but she also ends up becoming a makeup artist in Hollywood out of this. So it's kind of interesting. And then one of the interesting things is everybody who auditioned for this movie for Nancy or Tina, all of the girls got brought back and did auditions, a round robin kind of audition search, where Craven was picking and choosing which ones worked best with each other. And while Amanda Weiss lost the role of Nancy, she ended up getting Tina when she read with Heather Langenkamp. And then you get to Glenn, which is Johnny Depp, right? Role was originally, written as like a huge football jock, right? But the audition ended up opening up like Jack Earl Haley, who would later become Freddy in the 2010 remake. So Johnny Depp, it goes up against a bunch of people, including Charlie Sheen, who apparently pulled a fast one after they offered him the role, asking for double the amount of money on a broke film, like a movie that had no money. That he asked for double the weekly wages, and so
it's funny though, because right around the same time, he'll get a small part in Ferris Bueller and be up again, in the scene with Jennifer Grey, who was also,
right. So what I get from this is in the mid 80s, all of these people were just sitting in a room reading roles that went to different people. Like you know what I mean? I assume if we did research on Jennifer Grey in Dirty Dancing, we'd find out that Heather Langenkamp or maybe Demi Moore or some other people were there as well. Other people that read.
So many of them probably saw each other at every audition, and we're like, "Oh God, this
John
person again."
Cusack, John Cryer, Brad Pitt, Kiefer Sutherland, Nicolas Cage, and C. Thomas Howell have all been rumored to have made the audition, but Depp won it out. Like I said, it filmed for 32 days. It filmed on location in LA. The houses are real. Glenn's house, the Lance house, and also the place where Nancy lives are real. You can actually go to them, although they're at a regular section. The high school, Rich. Does the high school look familiar? The high school in the movie, does it look familiar? It should, because it's in
Venice
Greece,
High School?
And it's John Marshall. It's John Marshall High School, Greece. Pretty in Pink have all been filmed in this particular location.
Oh, John Marshall. Okay, that's the interior from Greece. Yeah. The exterior was Venice High School.
Venice High School.
That's the one I've been to. Yes.
Then, the other major locations. The other thing that comes up is the special effects and how some of the shots were made, that I want to get to really quick. 500 gallons of fake blood, one of the highest amounts used for special effects production at the time. But the blood geyser sequence, the blood didn't work. It was too thick and viscous, so they had to mix it with water. And then those two sequences, the Tina death and the Glenn death, it's a little bit reminiscent, and this is a deep dive, but it's a little reminiscent of, you remember when Billie Eilish was doing Bad Guy on Saturday Night Live, and they had the box within a box so they could spin it? Same thing here. They created a giant set that allowed for people to sit on the outside in car seats as they inverted the room so that Tina could get dragged across the ceiling, so that Glenn could get sucked into the bed, and the geyser would spout up, and because that's what it looks great. The other sequence that's a really amazing build, they built a bathtub and a bathroom set over a pool. So that sequence that you see when Nancy's in the bathtub and she falls asleep and the hand comes up, that was a tub that was built over a pool where they had an actor that could go up in the pool, and then that sequence was shot consecutively. So when she gets dragged down, it's into the hole that's in the tub, that's in the pool.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of great low budget, or I don't want to say low budget,
tricks.
Amazing in a derogatory fashion, but inventive and ingenious ways of doing things. The blood geyser was basically, they flipped, the set was upside down and it's just pouring down.
Right.
But they shot it,
Right. And they had a whole inverted box set. The tub thing blew my mind, because I'm thinking to myself, that looks like something that's shot in different places. But it was literally an actress getting dragged through the hole that they had created over the tub for the person to put the hand through. So they had a stunt person put the hand through, and then they kind of mixed and matched it, and it was the stunt woman getting dragged into the water, into the giant swimming pool that was under the tub set.
Mm-hmm.
It's an amazing, like, we don't do things this ingenious anymore, right? We don't do something like
screw it, green screen it, and
green screen. That's exactly right. Like, how about the step sequence where Nancy's running up the steps and the steps become like quicksand, or it's just pancake mix.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most ingenious thing going, and it's like, and of course the MPA made them cut 12 seconds of blood, because God knows America can't have their blood in their movies. Too much blood. We want just the right amount of blood. But when you're walking through it and watching it, Rich, it looks, when you hear the budget for the movie is only $1.1 million, Rich, right? Or $1.8 million. This movie, 40 years later, Rich, looks like $1 million. Mm-hmm. It looks like a gajillion million bucks. So let's go to box office. Speaking of $1 million, it grosses $1 million in its opening weekend, and when you're looking at the numbers, it's really interesting. It does a domestic gross of $25 million on a $1.8 million budget, right, Rich? That is astounding numbers, and if you prorate it out to box office inflation, $81 million today. Also, an amazing feat for this movie. It opens on 165 screens nationwide. It never gets above 274, moving around the country. It grosses $25 million over a span of November 9th to the end of the year. So it never plays like a multiplex movie like we see today. It only plays on 270 screens at its height. Right? Those are astounding numbers for that. Those are, it never gets above 274 theaters. It grosses $25 million on a 1.8 budget, so that's 15 times or 5% of the total gross. It's an amazing, it's 14 times the budget, I should say. It's an amazing amount of money that today would be a movie in say $81 million range. So right now we're talking about Terrifier, right? As an independent movie that cost $2 million to make with marketing and everything, right? It's grossed about $45 million, somewhere around there. Hold on.
Somewhere in that number, yeah.
44.5 as we tape the show. And that movie is a wild success. Can you imagine if a movie cost $1.8 million or $4 million and grossed $81 million? It's astounding. And it also, the sheer volume of things, the DVD releases, VHS releases, VHS rentals, all of the different things. They just recently released it in 4K, a new spanking new digital version of the movie. Lots of money, and all helped to build New Line so that New Line could eventually afford to make your Lord of the Rings movies.
Yes, I was going to say.
Well,
that was one of the words I was going to draw from here. to Lord of the
or
Rings.
we get Legacy of critical response then and now. We use Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes, this is insanely high, 94%. We use Rotten Tomatoes just as an aggregate. 94% from critics, 84% from audiences. I think that's low for the audience score, just for sheer volume. But when you look at the reviews, the reviews are transcendent because it is a transcendent piece of film history. Like, it is one of those movies where not only stands the test of time, but in rewatching it today, Rich, it's so much better than most of the slasher movies we will ever see or have seen. I've seen anyway. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about it today. It truly succeeds, and I think it's all Wes Craven stuff, right? It truly succeeds because I don't hate the four kids. I'm not rooting for Freddy in this movie.
No.
Right? You're rooting for Nancy. You're rooting for Glenn. You're rooting for Rick. Is it Rick? No, it's not Rick. It's
Rod.
Rod and Tina. You're rooting for all of them. You're rooting for John Saxon to a certain extent. You're not rooting for Freddy. And I think I care about them. I care about her. I love the fact that she becomes proactive. I love the fact that she becomes proactive. They start studying Eastern religion stuff. If you fall asleep in your dreams, you have to fight, or if you die, you don't make it back.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's jumped up my list with the rewatch today. I was thinking about that today. It's jumped up.
I'm gonna ask a question because I honestly kind of don't know.
Sure.
This is definitely part of the 80s genre or 80s slasher subgenre wave. Is this the first one in that subgenre grouping that actually relies on elements of the supernatural as opposed and kind of shifts it half foot into fantasy, whereas everything else was just like crazy guy escapes from the mental asylum, dresses up as Santa Claus, stab. This guy, because I'm not sure where the mystical shit started to happen in Friday the 13th compared to this.
Oh, it happened early. It happened early. It happened early in Friday the 13th.
Okay.
What I would say is two things. Friday the 13th was starting to do the supernatural by part 2, right? Because part 2, Jason's the killer. He comes back from the lake. He doesn't get his mask till 3, but it's supernatural at that point. What I would say is this is the first time where a backstory and a philosophy is used, right? It's the first time where you have the slasher genre married with reality versus dream state. You know what I mean? It's the first time, and I think Roger Ebert said it. It's the first time that Nightmare on Elm Streets are the college buddy of the working class Friday the 13th movies, right? Or there's a lot more going on in the script. He's got a lot more things to say, like whether you want to, like, Friday the 13th and other slashers from the 80s are not going to be focused on an alcoholic mom, a dad that's not there. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's the first time when the mysticism and also, it's something that eventually uses again in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, right? The idea of fables or urban legends building things into a, that's where the power comes from, right? I think it's the first time there. Like, usually slashers are just people that are not great and they decide they're going to kill a bunch of people, all the babysitters. This is the first one where the person running the show understands Eastern philosophy and, read a bunch of articles in the LA Times about a sleep disorder that very few people know about, and, and brings it in and makes it part of the film, and in turn creates a need, right, from slasher people who like slasher films. Yeah, but what's the backstory? You know, when I was talking about Terrifier 3 earlier, and I said, I don't know what the story is yet, but I'm sure we're going to get there at some point. This is icon status, hit the ground running, backstory, and checks all the boxes. Backstory has some sort of mystical element to it, has also like a fairy tale kind of thing going on. The idea of like, don't give the witch all the power kind of thing, right? The idea that our nightmares are somehow, manifestations of what we really fear. I think it's the first one that has all that cred, right? And then this movie, you have the Friday the 13th, right? And then you have this movie, and this movie sets the bar so ridiculously high that we start to get, Wishmaster, or the Djinn, like we start to get slasher movies that are have intricate backstories and have intricate, like, it's the first time it happens.
Yeah, I would say, even kind of kicking the door open a little bit for like the Hellraiser series and stuff.
Yes. Yeah, I think this is the first time where you have a horror icon that can be more than the sum of his parts. Right? And also, like, it builds an intricate backstory where I was thinking about this long and hard today. Like, the backstory is so intricate and detailed, right? He's killing the kids of Elm Street because the parents all got together and vigilanted him and burned him to crisp. And now he's back and he's punishing the parents, and everybody's trying for it, Rich. Like, I've watched so many, like, I've been watching a string of, because I'm doing the 31 JW 31 and 31, right? So I've been watching I've strung together some interesting movies, but I've also strung together today in particular. I strung together two movies that are loved, but they're not necessarily best of genre. Like, they're grisly kind of like slasher movies that have interesting beats, but they don't have everything. You know what I mean? Like, they don't. And this is the first movie that puts it all together so that you can create an interesting backstory where a guy would be brought back from the dead to punish the children of the parents that murdered him. Like, and it creates, what that does, Rich, is it creates a need. It creates a need from horror film goers to have that backstory. Now, I will say that we've gotten away from it, and we're willing to go along for the ride sometimes, as is the case with Terrifier. He's a horror icon, but we don't know why he does what he does yet. But it's there where the craving is there, right? The idea that we want to know. That's why we go back. And Freddy and Nightmare on Elm Street is the first time where all of these things come together, and the person pulling the string just happens to be one of the best horror film directors of all time. Like, he's top 3. You know what I mean? Like, he's top 3 in the idea that he is seemingly launched. In my mind, he's launched 3 franchises. So the Hills Have Eyes movies have, like, they're their own subgenre. Shocker is an underrated 80s movie that basically was him, Universal getting him finally with the letter they had sent, and him being pissed off at New Line for stealing Freddy. Right, so it's an interesting gambit, but the movie works on so many levels.
I'm kind of glad that Shocker didn't become a big hit, though, and they didn't wind up doing a crap load of sequels, because
we wouldn't have gotten to Scream.
We wouldn't have gotten to Scream, and what's his name? The guy who's the lead in Shocker,
Mitch Pileggi.
Would never have gone on to, I don't think, with that kind of pedigree, I don't think he would have landed, if he had done a bunch of Shocker sequels, I don't think he would have gone on.
That's the amazing thing. Right, and Peter Berg is also in Shocker, and Peter Berg wouldn't have, you know what I mean? Like, there are so many reasons why the movie didn't become a household name, but they're all wrong. They're all wrong about that movie. That movie I was talking about this with Jerry on Loud Nerdy last week. Shocker is one of those movies where it's like he takes what he's learned and he ups the ante, but he doesn't have Freddy. If that makes sense. Like he ups the ante, and it's like it could have been the greatest Nightmare on Elm Street movie of all time. Like and that's but the thing about this movie, I was watching it today, Rich. It's aged beautifully. It looks great. It looks like $100 million movie. Like it looks so much better. All the tricks work. None of the tricks fail. Like even the fucking bug out of the actress's mouth, which isn't real. You know, it's a fucking model, but everything looks 1,000 times greater than it does. Freddy's scary. He's not laughable in this one. And Langenkamp is so convinced. She's so, girl next door it just blends beautifully, and Craven knows what he's doing. And it's one of the few slasher movies from the 80s where you look at the teens, right? Care about every single one of them. And that's, I had a day today where I didn't care about anybody. And I watched Nightmare on Elm Street, and I'm like, I don't want any of these four to die. They seem to be good people who are having a bad dream.
I think the actress playing the mom is not great.
No,
she has a couple flat lines, and I think the way they show her alcoholism is
I hit rock bottom, and God knows I'm just gonna stop drinking today
because it's a sunny day.
Because it's a sunny day.
That's not the reason why you're gonna stop drinking.
But yeah, no. There are pieces that fall flat, but for the most part, Rich, like the stuff with Saxon's really good. John Saxon's really good in this movie.
But this movie has where it counts, where it's really needed.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And also like the thing about the movie, it hums. It's an hour and 30 minutes. It gets everything. It zips by. It gets everything that it wants to hit with. Freddy's dangerous. He's scary. Like it's scary shit. This movie is still scary 40 years later. And also, the practical effects are off the chart. Like the shit they get away with for $1.8 million is absolutely incredible because the Geyser blood looks amazing. Also, can I also since we're talking about critical stuff, can I tell you that every once in a while you rewatch a movie and you see something and then you go down a rabbit hole that I went down?
No, you may not tell me this. You may not tell me.
I'm telling you.
Go ahead.
I'm telling you. So I had never realized that in the middle of the movie when Nancy is trying to stay awake, she is watching The Evil Dead. That's the movie she's watching. Now, so I went down a rabbit hole today, and this is an interesting thing, and we can talk about legacy. It kind of ties into legacy. But so the rabbit hole goes something like this. At the end of the movie, it says Wes Craven wishes to thank Sean Cunningham, Sam Raimi, and Jack Shoulder. Now, I told you I'm on an 80s slasher binge. I watched the movie. First off, Jack Shoulder will eventually direct Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Jack Shoulder also directed an amazing 80s slasher movie with the most incredible cast called Alone in the Dark, which you were talking about, Stabby Stabby Patients. That's the ultimate Stabby Stabby Patients movie. By the way, the patients are played by Jack Palance, Martin Landau. Their doctor is Donald Pleasance. And the guy they're going after, the family, it becomes a home invasion movie. The family is led by Dwight Schultz from the A-Team.
Who is so good in everything else that it kills me whenever I see him pop up. I'm going to be like, oh, here's another Dwight Schultz.
But this is a movie I'd never seen. It's directed by... This is a movie I'd never seen, Rich. It's directed by Jack Shoulder. It's phenomenal. Like, it's so good. They play a bunch of inmates, Donald Pleasance. And it's kind of what I was saying about the build of a slasher film. Donald Pleasance plays a psychiatrist that basically doesn't believe in locking up his patients, even though it's dangerous to not do so. And he has the third floor where the patients are all fucking psychotic, including Jack Palance and Martin Landau. And the other patient, the evil child molester of the bunch, is the kid who played the lightning guy from The Running Man. So it's that huge guy, right? So it's them and Martin Landau and Jack Palance. And then there's another serial killer involved. And it's just this movie where a blackout happens and the electric security on the house doesn't work. So they all escape. And they all go after the doctor that's new to the hospital. And basically he's new to the hospital and they think he killed the other doctor.
Speaking of doctors, can I just side point here? Did you realize who the doctor in...
Yeah, Roger Rabbit is the doctor. Yes, Charles Fleischer. Absolutely. Also, did you see who the teacher was? Lynn Shay? The teacher was Shay. So I think like that's like it's not only the house that Freddy built, right? A New Line becomes a major studio out of this movie, right? They become a distributor, a full-time filmmaking force. But the sheer volume, like rewatching today, Rich, I was watching it. It's way better than some of the movies that get a lot of the cred. Like I know people love The Exorcist and I know people love The Shining, but there is a simplistic, brilliant, nuanced version of A Nightmare on Elm Street where it tackles. And again, like except for the mom is a little bit bad, but I can forgive and forget for that. But the legacy of this movie, crazy. Franchise viability up the wazoo, by the way. 6 films, all grossing at least $25 million or more. So one of the more profitable franchises in film history. Also, eventually they do Freddy versus Jason, which ends up becoming a pretty big hit. And then a remake that makes a lot of money but isn't good. And a constant, actually, the interesting thing about the legacy and franchise availability is there's a constant ticking clock, right? So Jack Earle Haley tried to play Freddy in the reboot 2010. He was okay, nothing great, but the clock is ticking for we might not get another Robert Englund Freddy, but I
don't think we
are. We probably won't, but. There have been rumors like the reboot machine, the most interesting, and it came from Englund himself, who he thought in watching current movies, who could play Freddy the right way, the way he made, right? The person he said was Kevin Bacon. And I got to tell you, that would sell fucking tickets.
Yeah, I would buy one.
Because that would be a real interesting choice. But like, think about this, Rich. He had a weekly television show, Freddy's Nightmares. He, appeared on MTV. I watched a video of him on a Nickelodeon kids show where he came out and was talking about Freddy. Like, we can't even begin to. And I think you hit on a real interesting thing. It is the first time mysticism and everything and supernatural kind of all gets swept up into the mix. It's not the first time because Jason is from the dead, but it's the first time that you mix really smart components to create the base of a supernatural. Like a supernatural bouillabaisse, like a soup where it's, I vote Kevin Bacon. I do too. It would be he'd be fucking amazing. Because there's an edginess to Kevin Bacon that I think would make he could go either way. He could do comedic or he could do terrible. And I think he could pull off both.
I have one other point here too. After New Nightmare kind of ground things to a halt there for a while with the franchise in '94.
Yeah.
New Line was looking at relaunching it and stuff. They reached out. They had a couple of different scripts that were developed. One script, which honestly has never leaked out, and it's pissing me off because I'd love to read it, was a relaunch written by and possibly was going to be directed by one New Zealand director by the name of Peter Jackson.
Wow.
Yes.
I bet you that would
And
be interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where his relationship with New Line started, if I'm got my timeline correct. But
that would be an interesting script to read. I'd be interested in that just to see where it went.
That one's probably just sitting on a shelf collecting dust somewhere at New Line. And
I realize I realize I didn't finish
I'm going to do a little breaking and entering. I think
I didn't finish my. Let me. So the movie's dedicated. That's okay. I fucked up. The movie's dedicated to Sean Cunningham, Sam Raimi, and Jack Shoulder. Jack Shoulder, who eventually will make that movie. But the Sam Raimi one is interesting because in the original Evil Dead, two things happen. Oh, actually, in the first Evil Dead, there's a Hills Have Eyes poster on the cabin wall. Then in Evil Dead Part 2, Dead by Dawn, right, the sequel, Freddy's glove is on the fucking thing where Ash makes the chainsaw hand. Freddy's glove is sitting. So they apparently it went on for years. Sam Raimi and Wes Craven passed things back and forth, where they would show that they were in a rivalry with each other, but they love their films, which I think is such a great play. And also Sean Cunningham directed all the second unit stuff on this movie. So Sean Cunningham comes off of Friday the 13th, loses that franchise that's still in litigation to this day. 2024.
Yeah.
And basically Wes Craven gives him a job to do the second directing. So I think and also the thanks there is you've started this incredible slasher run with the Friday the 13th franchise, and I'm going to pick up the slack. And that's what I think. I think this movie is head and shoulders above Friday the 13th. The Freddy movies are head and shoulders above because they're smarter. They're the first one especially. Everything else, sequel notwithstanding, it's a law of diminishing.
Even the non Wes Craven directed ones, the directors have all gone on to good stuff. Jack Shoulder for Nightmare 2 went on to do The Hidden, among other things. Chuck Russell, who directed Dream Warriors, the third film, went on and did the 1988 remake of The Blob and The Mask.
It's an
Rennie
incredible
Harlan, Rachel Talalay, who went on to do Tank Girl and has directed some very fan-acclaimed episodes of Doctor Who more recently. Is the one who directed Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, after working special effects on one or two of the other
Yeah, the legacy is incredible.
It's been a great spawning ground for careers.
For other careers. And also one we have to talk about is Heather Langenkamp acts in two of the films, but then becomes a makeup artist. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but it becomes a makeup artist with her husband that leads into New Nightmare. New Nightmare's plot is about an actress and a makeup artist, right? It's an incredible start to a franchise that has never really waned, and it's not something where people got sick of Freddy. Like that's one thing.
I would say when you have Freddy showing up on Nickelodeon kids shows, maybe you've defanged your villain a little bit, especially when the original conception was he was a child molester, for goodness sake.
I think maybe. I don't know if I agree.
But I think that's part of the fun of Freddy after a while. You couldn't keep him this evil. He's kind of like this mischievously weird evil. Yes, he's gonna kill you, but he's gonna have a couple of witty bald malts while he does it. He's
mischievous, and
he's a homicidal Mr. Mixoplick.
Yes, or Mr. Rogers. Homicide. Like the idea that he's going to teach you a lesson while he's killing you is, and also cracking a joke.
Yes, that's another thing too. Freddy was held up along with some other horror icons in like that satanic panic backlash to stuff like this in D&D, where they said, "Oh, horror movies and slasher movies are bad because it's just kids getting killed." And even as a teenager, I was like, "Well, let me think about this for a second. It's the kids who are engaging in premarital sex who are getting killed.
You should be rooting for them. Moral majority.
It's usually the virginal girl who is the one who vanquishes the bad guy.
Also, the ones doing drugs and drinking pay dearly.
Yes.
Although I will say that is one of the things that this movie does not have. Like, they're kids that are hanging out, but they're not kids that are doing, like, a couple of them have sex.
Well, Rod and Tina do.
Yeah, but it's not like they're kind of exclusive. It's not like we're hooking up at a fucking party or at a cabin in the middle of the woods. Like, that's what I said. Like, one of the things, there's something elevated to Wes Craven's stuff, where, and he brings it to everything. Like, when we get to Scream, again, think about Scream, think about this movie. How much do you care about the kids in Scream, and how much do you care about the kids in Nightmare on Elm Street? It's a pretty amazing thing that he brings to the table, where he makes these horror films where people are going to get killed, but one of the reasons
the characters actually engaging, instead of just, here's a character traits and maybe you might,
here's a girl with big boobs, here's a jock, here's a the druggie of the group. That's one of his lasting legacies, is that he is created in a fan base, the horror genre. He has created the will and need to make it elevated, make it bigger, make it better. Give it Eastern philosophy if you can pull it off. Give it, and some filmmakers really, they look at Wes Craven films and they're films where, even in his swings and misses, Rich, they're at least he's trying hard. Swamp Thing is a swing and a miss, but it's one of the great 80s movies. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah.
But this is a great place to stop. What do you got going on, Rich? Where can people find your work? What do you got going on Film Buff Online?
Woo! All right. First of all,
I just last thing. I do want to say, rewatching it today, it was way better than I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was, it's beautiful.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I think this is a great, and yes, Joe has a good point there that Kevin
he has Friday death credit. Also, quick thing before we go and get to you, Kane Hodder, by the way, was originally up for the role of Freddy, didn't get it, but in Jason Goes to Hell, Kane Hodder is the hand that is in Freddy's glove that reaches through and grabs the mask. So he did get to play Freddy at some point.
Aw, happy ending. And I mean, this is a great time of year if you love horror stuff. Do want to point out Wednesday on Turner Classics, they're doing a bunch of Hammer horror films. Ooh. We've talked about Hammer last year at this time.
We love him.
So if you enjoyed those discussions, I don't think any of the ones that we talked about are being screened on Wednesday, but the studio just has a great overall reputation. Go check that out. Sunday, I will be in Manhattan at the New York Comedy Short Film Festival. And
are you competing? Are you in it?
Yeah, we're screening This Way to the Egress there in the 5:30 block. Go to the Cineverse.com Facebook page, and you can find information on tickets there. All of my writing that's not screenplay related is available at FilmBuffOnline.com. We are in the middle of course, our series for the 50th season of Saturday Night Live. This past week was 11 great Halloween sketches, spooky sketches that the show did over its 50 years.
Surely David Pumpkins would be on the list.
No, actually, these are 11 great sketches that aren't David S. Pumpkins. Now, the reason I did that was because David S. Pumpkins turns up on every list, with the exception of mine. I don't like that sketch all that much, but I defer to other people. I'm not gonna, yuck their yums on that. But I kind of went through and I picked out a bunch of other stuff. A sketch with Christopher Lee and Lorraine Newman from the 3rd season, which is super, super sweet. Threw some Coneheads in there, and some other stuff.
Did the movie with Taylor Swift and Bill Hader make it?
No, it didn't. I forgot about that one, actually. It might have been a
Firelight is a fantastic sketch. It's a fake movie trailer. I would also recommend Firelight. and recently they did a movie trailer for Oscar the Grouch.
That one was really good too. For
good.
the pre-tape ones though, I kind of had to go with Midnight Coterie of the Sinister Visitors, the Wes Anderson riff, because it's just so perfect in capturing Wes Anderson's style and tweeness.
That's fair.
And then throwing it into a home intruder horror movie.
That's fair. I agree with that. That's well done.
And Ed Norton is just amazing in that. So so that's an ongoing thing we have there. I'm going to be slowly rolling out a few more of my reviews from Philadelphia Film Festival as quickly as I can get them written. And I can be found on the socials as at FilmBuffRich on Twitter and Blue Sky. FilmBuff Online can be found on Twitter at FilmBuff Online. We also have, as I mentioned, a Facebook page, which has all of our stories going up as they go up on the main site. You'll get a notification through that. You'll also get some of our history posts. And sometimes we even throw a little bit of quick breaking news on there as well.
So if you like our show, please like and follow on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. We're there all over the place. You can also find us on IMDb. You can find me, JW the Movie Guy, on Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever the fuck the crazy man is calling it this week. Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram. You can find all my stuff there. You can also find me on Tuesday nights with my good buddies, my other good buddies, Kyle and Jerry. We're doing Loud and Nerdy tomorrow night at 9. We will not have a Loud and Nerdy next week because I feel it's too fraught with danger and everybody's nervous and everybody's going to be watching the election, so nobody's going to be paying attention. But we will be back next week, and the election and a few key stories, Rich, got to us this week.
Yes.
And so we will be doing this next week. All the President's Men. It is from 1976. It is a perfect night, pre-election night movie. And to explain the importance of a full and vigorous press, as opposed to something that, like the LA Times or the Washington Post, a non-vigorous press. Also, coming, I want to congratulate last night the boys on End of the Night who came back for a nice episode with Scott Chiaffo, David Madison, and our own Joe Ridley. Congratulations on that. And then also coming Thursday, November 7th, World Class Clown with Robert Bass. Found out his favorite movie last night. I wish him the best. His favorite movie is Forrest Gump. Not a big Gump fan, but I'm going to be a big fan of the show. Thank you for
Zemeckis is here. Opens this coming
weekend.
Opens
this week. Yeah, I was talking about this like this Thursday. You think things are depressed at the box office at the Hollywood Reporter this week? Wait till we don't get any kind of opening on any movie Thursday night because it's fucking Halloween.
Oh yeah, Thursday's gonna be dead.
And I don't know if here's going to be good or not. So I don't. It's an intriguing premise. I don't know. I want it to succeed because I like Zemeckis and I like Hanks and I like Robin Wright. But we'll see what happens. Play it out.
Yeah, we've got that. It looks like the Coraline re-release for its 15th anniversary. The Godzilla 70th anniversary re-release is going to be Godzilla -1 this coming weekend.
With extra footage. I think they said extra 10 minutes. So lots of good things. Next week, All the President's Men as we prepare for Election Day. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
Have a good sleep. See you in your dreams. 1